Tehran's strategizing pays off again, as several of its clients strike a deal that undermines Kurdish hopes of independence. Iraqi forces took Kirkuk city from the Kurds this week with hardly a shot fired. 22 Kurdish fighters were killed in the sporadic and disorganized resistance, while 7 Iraqi soldiers also lost their lives. It is a remarkable setback for the Kurds, who just a few weeks ago held an independence referendum. The loss of Kirkuk especially, given the city's vast oil resources, lessens the likelihood that an independent state will emerge from the Kurdish regional government area in northern Iraq. Now the Iraqi forces are rolling into other areas conquered by the Kurdish regional government in the course of the war against ISIS, including Sinjar city, close to the border with Syria. Meanwhile, an exodus of Kurdish civilians is streaming in the direction of Erbil and Suleymaniye cities. Kurdish forces are withdrawing from the areas of Makamur and Konakan as well. Yazidi civilians, who bore the brunt of the ISIS assault in the summer of 2014, are again uncertain of their fates as they wait for the arrival of Iraqi forces. The capture of Kirkuk recalls other swift and decisive assertions of control that the Middle East has witnessed in recent years. Perhaps the closest parallel might be the Hezbollah takeover of West Beirut in May-June 2008. Then, too, a pro-Western element, the March 14 movement, sought to assert its sovereignty and independent decision-making capabilities. It had many friends in the West who overestimated its strength and capacity to resist pressure. And in the Lebanese case as well, a sudden, forceful move by an Iranian client swiftly, and, it seems, permanently, reset the balance of power, demonstrating to the pro-Western element that it was subordinate and that further resistance would be fruitless. There is, of course, a further reason to note the similarity between Kirkuk in October 2017 and Beirut in 2008. Namely that in both cases, the faction that drove its point home through the judicious use of political maneuvering and the sudden application of force was a client of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. In Lebanon, the client was Hezbollah, the prototype of the IRGC-sponsored political military organizations that Iran is now using to exert its influence across a huge swathe of the Middle East. In Iraq, the equivalent force is the PMU, Popular Mobilization Units, or Hasht al-Shabi. These fighters spearheaded the entry into Kirkuk, working in close coordination with the Iraqi Army's 9th Armored Division, the Emergency Response Unit of the Federal Police, and the U.S. Trained Counterterrorism Service. The Shia militias of the PMU were raised in June 2014, following a fatwa from renowned Iraqi Shia cleric Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani. At that time, ISIS was heading for Baghdad, hence the need for the rapid mobilization of auxiliary fighters. The PMU's forces now consist of about 120,000 fighters in total. And while dozens of militias are associated with it, a handful of larger formations form its central pillars. The three most important groups are all pro-Iranian and directly connected to the Revolutionary Guards. These are Khatib Hezbollah, headed by Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, Asaib al-Haq, headed by Qais al-Hazali, and the Badr organization, commanded by Hadi al-Amari. All three of these leaders are closely linked to Quds Force Commander General Qasem Soleimani. They are, as one region-based diplomat put it, Iran's proconsuls in Iraq. Al-Amari, al-Muhandis, and Soleimani himself were all present in Kirkuk on October 15 and 16, laying the groundwork for the takeover of the city. Badr and al-Haq fighters also played a prominent role in the incursion into the city. However, they were not the only Iran-linked element in Kirkuk. The Kurdish retreat appears to have been the product of a deal between the Iraqi central government and the Kurdish party that dominates in Kirkuk, the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. According to eyewitness reports, the PUK's Peshmerga forces abandoned their positions, rendering a coherent defense of the city impossible. The PUK-Iran relationship dates back 25 years, to the days when both were engaged against the Saddam Hussein regime in Baghdad. Due to this alliance, the PUK only reluctantly supported the Kurdish independence referendum of September 25. Indeed, the fractured nature of Kurdish politics, the absence of a single, united military force, and the differing international alliances and orientations of the two main parties in the KRG, namely the Kurdish Democratic Party of President Masoud Barzani and the PUK, have long constituted a central vulnerability of the Kurdish system in northern Iraq. We appear to have witnessed a masterful exploitation of this vulnerability, a sudden and decisive turning of the screw. Details have emerged in the Kurdish media of a supposed agreement reached between Baiful Talabani, eldest son of former PUK leader and Iraqi President Jalal Talabani, and Hadi al-Ameri of the PMU. Some sources claim that it was al-Muhandis, not al-Ameri, who represented the PMU. The deal would establish a new authority in the Halabja-Soleimani-Kirkuk area, to be jointly administered by the Iraqi government and the Kurds, or rather, the PUK, for an undefined period. The federal government would manage the oil wells of Kirkuk and other strategic locations in the city, while also overseeing the public sector payroll.